While you may have never heard of Bohemian Grove, the decisions that have been made by its members have affected all of our lives. It has been the meeting place for some of the world's most powerful and influential politicians and businessmen, and opened doors for many of them. There are long-standing rumors of murder, horrific abuse, pedophilia, and threats to those who may know too much. Is this a club for rich old men to kick back and have sex with prostitutes and each other? Or is there something more sinister in their agenda? You're listening to Creep It Real, and today we're discussing the Bohemian Grove.
Creep It Real is a weekly podcast where we present our theories of the subjects we cover based on our interest and research. Some material may be graphic and disturbing, so proceed with caution.
You're going to do it.
I'm not going to do it. Hey, friends. We're back, finally.
Hey.
Thank you for waiting and being patient.
Yes, we definitely appreciate the patience.
Yeah. We had some technical problems, and we might still be having we may still be having some technical problems, but I'm hoping that isn't the case. But anyway.
I just need adult supervision.
What are you doing over there?
Setting up.
Okay.
And everything keeps falling.
Oh, is that what's going on?
So sorry about it.
Well, this week we kind of dove into something. Well, last week we kind of dove into something that we've heard about a lot, but we haven't really gotten too deep into. And then we both kind of forgot what it was really all tied into a bunch of other topics that we're very interested to cover. So we're going to end up doing that, but it was kind of fun I say that it's like kind of a bizarro story, but it was kind of fun to get into it and realize that it was all tied into all this other stuff that we've been wanting to cover for a while. So cool. But at the same time, truly some of the most weirdo, bizarre stuff I've ever read in my life.
That's for dang sure. I don't even...
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, it's coming from people where it's like, huh? You know, some people you may expect some of this stuff from. Yeah. And these are not the people that I would expect that stuff from. So that's what makes it especially weird.
There's a couple in there that may break your heart.
Yeah. Depending on what you believe really goes on here at Bohemian Grove, something kind of creepy goes on regardless of the extent to which you think it goes.
Yeah.
But it's all kind of creepy. So let's just get into it and start unloading all of this vast amounts of information on you. 75 miles north of San Francisco, on 2,700 acres of Douglas firs and redwood trees, some over 1,000 years old, is the Bohemian Grove, a vast encampment owned by the Bohemian Club out of San Francisco. Bohemian Grove is the summer meeting place every July for a couple thousand of the most wealthy and well-connected, mainly Republican, politicians, business leaders, and other captains of industry. As of 2007, the Grove consists of 118 camps surrounding a man-made lake that is watched over by a towering owl shrine that is enormous, by the way, where the infamous cremation of care ceremony is held each year.
There are hundreds of structures on the 2,700 acres, ranging from elaborate clubhouses and sleeping quarters to a massive industrial kitchen and large amphitheater. In modern day, it is heavily guarded by security and local police. To be a part of the Bohemian Club, you must be invited by several members and likely wait patiently for a couple decades. They only accept new members when a current member is no longer a part of the club, and being that virtually no one leaves the club, you must wait until an elder member of the club passes to get your ticket into the group. When the club first started in 1887, the initiation fee was $100 with $3 a month dues after that. In 1930, it was raised to $500 with 15 months dues. In 1990, the initiation fee was raised to $10,000 and $120 month dues. Current estimates for the new Bohemian Grove members is a $30,000 initiation fee, with your monthly dues being around $600, though some pay less depending on their contributions to the club.
So, not cheap.
Wow.
a little pricey. I mean, that's...
Okay.
I mean, I'm trying to do the math in my head here. No, that's probably a bad idea.
Ooh,
I mean, that's for current members, that's over $35,000 a year.
Yeah.
And whatever even you get out of it beyond the 2 weeks of the, tomfoolery that goes on there.
I mean, are there monthly fees, or is that just something that funds like this 2 weeks of shenanigans, or what are they funding here?
I don't know. They must
$600 a month.
Yeah, they must do more stuff than just that 2 weeks because they have a full staff. The salaries for everybody are fairly significant. Like the chef makes $165,000 a year or something like that. The manager, the head manager or whatever is like hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. So everybody gets paid a lot, fairly decently, that works for them. I mean, depending on the job, I guess. So I don't know. I mean, they must do more than just this 2 weeks, but the 2 weeks, that must be a large chunk of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the club is registered with the IRS as a social club, which makes them exempt from federal income tax and possibly state property taxes.
Cool.
Right.
I just like that's what a scam that is. You know, I don't even want to get into taxes, but good Lord. You're registered as a social club, so you get out of property taxes for land in like one of the most priciest areas of the country because you're a social club.
Well, and the best part is like these are like politicians, like men of money and men of, you know, high power, and they're just like hee like we gotta pay taxes.
The main people that end up not paying their fair share of taxes in general. Oh Lord, this is where it all begins.
BS.
One of the requirements for 501c organizations is that their financial records are made available to the public if you know where to look. The 2013 records show that the Bohemian Club took in $10,168,000 in revenue for the calendar year. They paid out around $3,007,000 in staff salaries, and other expenses are listed as $2,971,000. And those were spent on things such as food, booze, insurance, electricity, building maintenance. And all of this makes their total expenses for the year a whopping $5,997,000. Their total assets were listed as $20,428,000. They are loaded. They're a bunch of loaded old dudes. Like,
to the gills.
Yeah, talk about just a bunch of crusty old white dudes. Like, that's essentially these guys with money. And so as you think about that, and also some of the most conservative Republicans, and it's just funny because when we start getting into the details of what they're doing here, it's they live their lives one way and then they go to this alternate universe for 2 weeks to live, I don't know, their secret desires. I don't know what they're holding deep inside of them on a daily basis. I'm not quite positive.
You know what this reminds me of is, but you know that Amish thing, that Rumspringer? You reach a certain age in the Amish community and then you have like a week or whatever go live your life as like a worldly person.
Right.
And do whatever. And it's just like supposedly just a party. And then like you decide if you want to continue living the Amish way or. Yeah. This is like totally what that is. It's just
But they get it every year. Yeah. They get it. Yeah. They're old. And they just get it every year. They're like, okay. So, as we mentioned, the club is comprised of captains of industry, politicians, high-ranking military officials, and the occasional artist that they sprinkle in to keep with the club's bohemian roots. Here's where it gets a little hilarious, in my opinion, but its members see themselves as the moral pillars of our country. What makes America great? They are truly 2,500 of the country's richest and most conservative men. It is a place for these men to rub elbows with one another in private, relaxed, and informal environments.
This is like not your average tea party. We're all going to get together.
Cigar room.
Smoke a cigar.
Right.
Yeah.
No, they get a little freaky up in here. They call each other bohos or grovers, and they can bring guests into the mix, but they have to be pre-screened, and guests cannot stay the entire duration of the 2-week encampment. Yeah, so they're very exclusive.
While the club is extremely secretive and does not publish information on its members, a few of the Bohemian Grove rosters have made their way to the public via ex-employees or individuals who gained access to the club with the intent of gaining information. Some of the notable members of Bohemian Grove are George H.W. Bush, his son W. Bush, Karl Rove, Dick Cheney, Donald Rumsfeld, so basically the entire Bush cabinet, Bing Crosby, Clint Eastwood, Merv Griffin, heartbreakingly, Steve Miller from the Steve Miller Band. And when I told my husband that, he was like, well, what other Steve Miller is there? And I'm like, shut your mouth. Charles Schwab, Richard Nixon, and Arnold Schwarzenegger.
That was another heartbreaker for me. I was like, man,
Yeah.
I like, Arnold, and even politically speaking, generally seems fairly reasonable. And I'm like, why did you do it?
The lure.
Yeah, there's a couple of heartbreakers in there. That's not even remotely anywhere near all of the members that you would recognize the names of. But those are just some of the notable ones.
Every Republican president since 1923 has been member of the Bohemian Grove. Some consider the Grove to be the adult version of the Skull and Bones Club, and the cremation of care ceremonies similar to the satanic induction ritual the bonesmen are put through. Just a lot of money involved here.
Yeah.
For everybody that's like me and didn't realize that Skull and Bones was an actual thing and not just the 90s Paul Walker movie. When the Bohemian Club began in 1872, it was started by artists, musicians, and writers as an excuse to get away and drink late into the night. Who says you can't do that anyway?
Yeah, and
live your best life.
But quite a different. It's a pretty stark contrast to what it is now.
Yeah.
It's not quite just a bunch of artists that want to get away and get drunk. The Bohemians celebrated hedonism and overindulgence and reveled in rebelling against conservative conventions of culture. So yet again, I'm like, totally, doesn't in any way align with what it is today.
Yeah.
Soon after the formation, businessmen and those with money joined, and they were called men of use by the original founders, who called themselves men of talent. So, new members footed the bill for the increasingly elaborate parties that the group held. Essentially, it started off with the kind of people who are now the sole members of Bohemian Grove, as they were just kind of being used to pay for stuff. And then, over time, they just took over, obviously. By 1880, the group was holding weekend campouts in the vast redwood forests of Sonoma County. By 1893, they were renting space at Bohemian Grove from the Sonoma County Lumber Company, which they later purchased 160 acres from in 1901. They continued to expand until they acquired the current 2,712 acres, which they currently hold.
Why do you need so much space?
I don't know, but they need a lot. They need it because you have to be able to go to the very center of the camp to do your weirdo stuff, and people that break in won't be able to get to you through all the security. I'm sure. I'm just making that. I have no idea.
No, you're probably right.
Maybe that's what it is. And it's also probably a ton of money, worth so much money, which probably that's probably a great chunk of that 20 million. I wonder if it's even more than that though now.
Well, especially now. Yeah.
So Bohemian Grove became the favorite spot for wealthy men to relive their college years and party like there was no tomorrow. In the 1930s, it became a favorite of U.S. presidents as a sort of Camp David in the woods, which is when the media blackout began. Members and guests had a strict understanding that what goes on in Bohemian Grove stays at Bohemian Grove. All discussions that take place there, whether personal or business, are completely off the record. And that's where it starts getting a little disturbing, in my opinion, when you have all of these people who have the power to make laws that affect every single one of us in America and outside of America, that they're meeting in this secret club to privately talk to each other and influence each other. Like, that's where I'm, where I first start to prickle a bit at this whole situation, where no matter what you think goes on here, I don't like that too much, honestly. I mean, I guess that's what you could call all politics, is like some secret club, but still, it has no oversight whatsoever.
The club's logo since its inception is an owl, because members see themselves as enlightened and wise beings. Also, too, I did read that they said that because the owl can see in the dark, so as an owl, I guess you are someone that can see through like humanity's darkness, or
which doesn't sound like them very much in the first place. Sorry.
How are you gonna make decisions and be woke when you're blasted all week? Like, this doesn't. Sorry, but no.
Hey, I'm sure there's a lot of people that do that. I'm sure.
Not gonna touch that one. There is a 40-foot concrete owl shrine in the middle of the camp, which is the site of their annual cremation and care ceremony they perform to kick off the 2 weeks they spend at the Grove each year. This ceremony is an elaborate production with live orchestral music, fireworks, and a human sacrifice reenactment where a life-size effigy of a person is placed on an altar at the base of an owl and burned as a sacrifice.
It is nuts.
Wild.
Like, it is so dramatic. I mean, there's really no other way to put it. It is so elaborate and dramatic. You would think you were watching a freaking Las Vegas show or something. Like
on steroids though, man. Like,
yes. Oh, yeah, true.
Like, it's like a mixture between Phantom of the Opera, some crazy Cirque du Soleil Las Vegas show.
Yes, that's what I was thinking.
A giant Ku Klux Klan or something ceremony just blown out of proportion, and it's
oh god,
insane.
What a nightmare, man.
It is.
It sounds like a nightmare.
I did want to bring up though, they had a picture in one of the YouTube documentaries I watched of this so-called cremation of care, this human effigy, but they have portrayed it in a drawing as a very small skeletal figure with a big cranium and small hands. So, is it
like a kid?
Almost, yeah.
And I bet you they're definitely not going to say that to other people.
No.
You know, they're going to want to make it, yeah.
Because that's not acceptable. So for decades, very little information, if any, was published about the goings-on at Bohemian Grove. But in the 80s and 90s, word got out and reporters tried to sneak in for an inside scoop on multiple occasions. This has led to the camp being heavily guarded present day. In the late 70s, the first book about Bohemian Grove was published by William Domhoff, a sociologist and professor at the University of California, Santa Cruz, called The Bohemian Grove and Other Retreats. Domhoff found the Bohemian Grove to be of major sociological relevance because, as he states, they increase the social cohesiveness of America's rulers and provide private settings in which business and political problems can be discussed informally and off the record.
Right? That's creepy.
Shouldn't these things be on the record, though?
Well, they should be if you weren't meeting in your clubhouse with all your pals. Yeah.
It's a big dumb boys club.
Really?
Domhoff and a handful of other scholars insist that Bohemian Grove is not just a vacation hideaway, but functions to facilitate the ruling class networks and elitist ideologies, which affects the entire world.
Yeah, I would say so, considering that we're talking the heads of banks and the head of the military, and, you know, it's like, come on.
Yeah.
Y'all need to rein it in. I get that you want to get together and have fun.
Which is like
a bunch of dorks, but
there's no problem with that. If you want to do that, do that. Have a party. Nobody cares. But don't have weird ceremonies.
I don't need you to have a club where you're telling people who have the ability to increase military spending, or, you know, there's like all these things that they do in secret, and then they end up, or elect presidents for that matter, you know?
Well, and let's not forget that they're all probably drunk and probably smoking devil lettuce and, you know.
Hey now.
So anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's not ideal for all these people to be making decisions in this situation. An ABC News segment in 1981 disclosed members and discussed the cremation of care ceremony, also pointing out that no women were allowed as members or staff, and mentioned that the atomic bomb was developed by club insiders during a summer session in the 40s. Since that segment on ABC in 1981, there has not been one single news organization that has made a peep about Bohemian Grove, not even tabloid news. Only alternative news sites and the local Sonoma County Press Democrat newspaper acknowledges that the club even exists. There have been a few random pictures posted in National Geographic, I think back in a long time ago, before the 80s. There's been like some little pictures here and there, but aside from alternative news sites, there's been not a peep. Mm-mm. Probably because there are creeps that run these which, I mean, I think we'll get into a little more, but some of the like media moguls are members, so they are able to kind of limit what is published about it. So that's cool too. Basically, they're just like this little untouchable group. The Bohemian Club was taken to court by the Department of Fair Employment and Housing for not hiring female employees, and after a long battle, they lost and were forced to hire females on staff. At the time, though, it became a joke among the members that women were working in the kitchen where they belong, so it was not exactly a victory as far as that's concerned. As of 2015, they do have females on staff in higher positions other than the kitchen. So perhaps things have changed somewhat, but I highly doubt it. And also, again, we do this every episode where we're like, just wait till you hear. But just wait till you hear some of the ways that they treat women that I'm like, no, they, the only reason that they have females on staff is because they have to, and maybe because they're evil.
Well, you look at, we'll get into their behavior, but as if like I can see them being very selective about who they hire based upon their looks and submissiveness to their creepy tactics, so.
Or whatever they're willing to do. It's kind of like on, what is that documentary? The Keepers, was that what it was called?
Oh, yeah, The Keepers. Yeah, I did. That was actually really good.
Yeah, it was. How the DA for the police department and that wherever that was based out of in Boston or whatever, that lady who, her name I think was Mary.
Yeah.
Or something. That lady who was just, you watch and you're like, this bitch, like she is covering some stuff up for these people. Like, holy cow. But also, when we're talking about John Benet Ramsey, there's another one where it's like, just if you get the right people in the right positions, they'll do what you want them to, and you can get stuff out of them. So it seems like that's probably a Bohemian Grove tactic, is like, you hire people that you can also utilize in whatever way you need.
Yeah, that benefits you.
Right.
So.
I'm sure they're not the most respectful people in the world.
Doubt it. Doubt it.
Very highly. So, in 2008, when Hillary Clinton was making her first bid for presidency, at an appearance, a heckler shouted about Bohemian Grove, to which Bill Clinton responded, "The Bohemian Club, that's where all those rich Republicans go up and stand naked against redwood trees, right?" Referring to the common practice of members peeing everywhere in the camp willy-nilly.
Can we just talk about...
Yeah, what? The peeing or the...
I just wanted to say, you have to imagine Bill Clinton's voice when she reads that, because it just makes it that much better.
Can't do it.
So, like, laughed. I know. But anyway, go ahead.
What's also funny about that is that I also read that Bill Clinton was a guest sometimes, so I'm kind of confused if he ever actually was a guest or if that was just a rumor or what. But anyway.
Well, I think you had mentioned, like, there's a couple people that we don't think they necessarily wanted to partake in these activities or be really a part of this, but in order to further their political standing in positions, like they needed to at least participate in some of it.
So they had to go to a night or something, and they're like,
a weird man's club.
Right. It's like how I feel when I make plans generally. I'm like, oh no.
You're like, oh, you need to cancel. No.
I can't. I'm gonna jump out the window now. No. Yeah, because I do think that I'm sure there are a number of people that feel that way. So, as we had discussed, most members are Republicans who have historically been involved in big business more so than their Democratic counterparts. With the exception of Bill Clinton, not one single Democrat has ever dared to publicly denounce the Bohemian Grove, afraid of the backlash by their establishment colleagues in Washington. So it's essentially off limits for politicians and also media, basically. So that's, seems awfully suspicious. What are they doing? If it's just a club for them to go let loose, get drunk, pee in the woods, go fishing.
Which was apparently their favorite thing to do, was just whip it out and pee wherever, whenever, no matter what they were doing.
Right. Which, like, we have talked about this. While at the initial offset, I'm like,
it's convenient, I guess.
But yeah, like, if you're backpacking or hunting or something, obviously you have to. Yeah. But this is like, it's like everywhere you look, there is some old man's wiener hanging out of his pants, because everywhere you look, they're peeing. It's just this weird thing, like they just can't wait to do it. And they don't go discreetly behind a tree. They're in the middle of conversation and they whip it out and start peeing. I mean,
and Bill Clinton, he wasn't the only one to bring this up either. Like, it wouldn't have been such a big deal, but he's one of the quite a few people that are like, it was like very bizarre that I was just talking to him and like, hey man.
You're not expecting that. Oh Lord.
They're weird old man balls.
So the Bohemian Grove's mascot, as I mentioned a little while ago, is the owl, as they have this enormous, humongo, like I didn't really realize how big it was because I used to tell me 40 feet and I'm like, okay, cool. That doesn't really make any difference to me. I watched the video and I'm like, holy cow, that thing is enormous. It's huge. Yeah. Based off of Minerva, who is the goddess of wisdom, and the Greek equivalent would be Athena. There are also other reasons why they could have this owl. I mean, there's so many different things they represent in different cultures. I don't personally subscribe to any of that. I'm just like, birds of prey are the coolest.
They are. They truly are.
Yeah.
Have you seen the movie Secret of the NIMH?
No.
Okay, so it's an older cartoon, but it's really, really good. They have actually a character in the movie called the Great Owl, and he's like this foreboding character, and when you see him covered in cobwebs and stuff, and he only comes out at night, it's a really good movie. You should watch it. Everybody should watch it. You don't have to watch it, interpret it yourself, but it's really good.
So that's the owl thing. So the owl was also the same symbol that Adam Weishaupt, the German founder of the Order of the Illuminati, which was an actual thing. You know, we hear all this stuff about the Illuminati, but in the 1700s in Germany, the Order of the Illuminati was an actual organization.
Right.
And that owl was used as his own personal emblem.
Yeah.
And also, the owl, it can be found on the American dollar bill, hidden in the upper right-hand corner. It's so small.
It's tiny. So on the dollar bill, if you look at the top right-hand corner where the one is, the border around it, the left-hand corner is where you'll find it. And it's tiny, itty-bitty, but it's there. Which is like weird. Like why is this ominous symbolic critter on our nation's currency, you know?
Hidden even.
Is it because money truly is the root of all evil?
I think we already know the answer.
Yes.
Yeah. Because that's part of the thing about all these dudes at Bohemian Grove is, you have so much money that you need something else to thrill your old bones.
What do you do? I mean, you have everything. What else is there?
Yeah.
You know, like, clearly, they're understimulated.
Understimulated, yeah, right. They could just do some learning, you know. The group's patron saint, John of Nepomuk, received confessionals of the Queen of Bohemia in the 1300s, and when pressured by the king to reveal her confessions when he suspected her of cheating on him, he refused and he was killed by the king. And there is a large statue of St. John on the campgrounds carved from a tree trunk. It shows him holding his index finger over his mouth in the universal sign to keep your mouth shut and be quiet, which, like, okay, so there I have a statue of this dude who, you know, kept a secret no matter what. It cost him his life, and they have the statue of him telling everybody to shut their mouth on campground. So cool. So it just does make me wonder what kind of weird, I'm sure they have to sign non-disclosure agreements, but like what else really goes along with that, you know? So as you might suspect, that serves as a reminder to the bohos of the oath of secrecy of the club. What happens there stays there, unless it entails making decisions that affect the entire country or the world. But, you know, just those little tiny things. The club's motto is "Weaving spiders, come not here." They say this means that business is not to be conducted inside the grove, but we all know that's a load of bull because, as we'll see later, they do all sorts of business here. And it's really just a cover story for the actual meaning, which is don't dare challenge members or quote-unquote gods as they see themselves, which is an allegory coming from Greek mythology. According to the tale, a woman weaver, Arachne, once disrespected Athena, the goddess of weaving, by failing to acknowledge her weaving talents were a gift from the goddess and not her own power. Arachne boasted herself a better weaver than the goddess herself, and angered by the lack of respect, Athena turned Arachne into a spider, subjecting her and her descendants to weave webs forever as a curse for disrespecting the gods. Their cover-up motto meaning is meant for non-members as an attempt to diffuse the allegations that they conduct business in Bohemian Grove. So it's no surprise that the sayings and symbols of elitist organizations are not what we are told, and that they are, you know, obviously using certain things as kind of a cover for what they really mean to each other.
There are 124 different groups or camps at the Grove. Each camp has a unique name and 12 to 100 men who tend to work in the same field to provide its members with networking opportunities and commonality. The Hillbillies camp, which is mainly big business, bankers, politicians, and media moguls from Texas, has a son with a cloven-hooved and horned devil figure. One of the most elite camps, Mandalay, consists of former presidents and other top political figures with major defense contractors. Owl's Nest is another elite camp populated by former presidents, high-ranking military personnel, and defense contractors. Lost Angels is made of major bankers and media execs. Stowaways is the Rockefellers camp along with other big oil men. No seated president attends because his schedule and location are so closely monitored and would bring too much unwanted attention, but before and after their presidency, they make it a priority to be there.
It seems like it might be the case that in order to get your foot in the door to be the president, you have to go to Bohemian Grove for this little pants-off party with all these old dudes.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know, the fact that they would like group people together according to like their business and specialities, like, but no business goes on there.
Right. I didn't even think about that part. The Grove serves as an informal, evaluatory feedback process to top socioeconomic, domestic, and foreign policy councils in the U.S. This is a quote by sociologist Peter Phillips, who was a guest inside Bohemian Grove 2 times and earned his PhD writing his thesis on the Grove, which is pretty bizarre in my opinion. I mean, I don't know what...
Yeah.
I guess if you're a sociologist, that makes some sense. I'm just like, I don't even know.
Well, I was going to say, if it's so secretive and whatnot, what could you possibly write? I mean, I'm sure he clearly knows because he earned his PhD doing it.
Right. And I guess what he's saying is that they really are some of the top decision-making individuals in the world, and that their decisions that they come together and discuss at the Grove affect the whole world. And so even if he didn't see them, you know, sacrificing babies and having sex parties, he clearly knew enough about the Bohemian Grove to say that they affected the entire world with their goings-ons at the Grove, which that's pretty huge in itself. He's maybe one of the only people that isn't actually a part of the club who got to see inside for an extended amount of time, but probably only what they wanted him to see, you know. He's a Sonoma State University sociologist who has studied and published on Bohemian Grove extensively, and he calls it the Global Dominance Group. So that's an unsettling little name. Not exactly all the dudes I want dominating the globe.
Right.
Yeah. Although the club formally maintains that it is simply a retreat for these powerful, mainly white men, and mainly Republican men, and that no business is conducted here, there is plenty of evidence that this is simply a cover for the fact that they are conducting off-the-record business during their annual retreat. For example, in 1942, Edward Teller was said to have planned the Manhattan Project at Bohemian Grove, which, in case you are unaware, was the research and development of the first nuclear weapon during World War II. That's a pretty significant development that took place. Yeah, a little businesslike. The United Nations was also birthed inside the club, and in 1945 the club served as the original formation meeting place with delegates from over 50 nations in attendance. So,
this is just, if you think about the scope of this is insane.
Yeah, I mean, these are pretty powerful people, and all meeting at this weirdo place.
And these decisions are being made here, yet there's no media allowed, there's no public viewing. Like, what else are they doing in there?
Exactly. Something weird. I'm sweating, man. It's like 90 degrees here.
What?
I am really grossed out. It is rumored that Alan Greenspan became the chairman of the Federal Reserve Bank shortly after meeting at the Grove, where insiders came to a consensus that he should be their man. A picture of Reagan and Nixon inside Bohemian Grove in 1967 has been published, and Nixon admitted in his memoirs that his path to presidency began with his lakeside talk at the Grove, which we'll get into more of those lakeside talks in a little while, but they seem to be pretty influential as far as what these old dudes are concerned. That's basically...
These old dudes.
Yeah, instead of bohos and Grovers, I'm calling them old dudes.
That's what they are. I'm
not tarnishing the name of Grover from Sesame Street with the goings-ons of Bohemian Grove. Dwight Eisenhower's road to the White House also started at the Grove. In 1950, 2 years before he was elected, he gave a lakeside talk that impressed the establishment insiders, something that But after learning how the geopolitical system really worked, once in the Oval Office, Eisenhower's conscience began to bother him. In his presidential farewell address after his 2 terms were coming to an end, he warned Americans, "In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for this disastrous and misplaced power exists and will persist." Well, yeah, and it's happened. But we'll see how that came to fruition. There are rumors that in the build-up to the 2000 election, Bohemian Grove members Bush Sr. and Colin Powell, along with other neocons, decided that Dick Cheney would be Bush Jr.'s running mate, which we can all agree was a disastrous decision, being that Dick Cheney is literally the most evil person alive. That was somebody who had a plan Look at this. Donald Rumsfeld, Dick Cheney, Colin Powell. I mean, these are all people, as Shai said earlier, that were part of the Bush cabinet. And I'm pretty positive that Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld were the actual presidents whenever Bush was there. You know. Oh, what was that?
I don't know.
Is that me? It sounded like a flute was playing and...
Dude, I'm telling you, whenever we do these government freaking episodes, it's my FBI agent.
We each have FBI agents assigned to us, so
yeah.
He's somewhere in your house just playing the flute. Okay, so let's talk about the cremation of Kara ritual, which is...
I'm sure this is what everybody wants to hear.
Yeah, the real dramatic stuff. This is big-time drama. A mock human sacrifice ritual. It's performed with a life-size effigy of a metal skeleton framework that's wrapped in paper. There was a employee that kind of only got the job so that he could get info from the Bohemian Club, and he got some photos and touched the thing and reached inside of it. But he got a close-up photo, and it showed that the effigy has 2 arms, 2 legs. Now, he said it's the size of an adult. Like Shai said, some say it's not. I don't really know what's what. All I know is it's a metal skeleton wrapped in paper.
Yeah.
Which, that in itself is like, okay.
So weird.
Cool.
Do they reuse the skeleton? What's the point of it being metal?
Yeah, maybe. Maybe they do.
Okay.
But, I mean, I guess that would make sense.
I guess because real human bones, well, when you cremate someone, those bones left over, supposedly, so.
Yeah, especially, you wouldn't be able to burn a whole body, bones and all, in a fire like that. You know, you have to have a very intense heat.
I just, got this, memory of when, Squid tells the story of the beast. He's like, he ate them bones and all.
So it's at sunset on the second Saturday of July. There's a small number of members that carry out the ceremony while everyone else sits in bleachers and watches. It's performed by the high priest, who dons a silver robe with a red cape, doing his best Doctor Strange impression, and a couple dozen other men wearing black and red robes, some holding flaming torches, accompany him on the stage. Like we said, it's super KKK-ish, honestly. It's like, it's a little too KKK-ish for my own liking. It's also a little high school drama performance.
Yeah.
Funded by, it's like the richest, most well-funded high school drama club you could ever find.
It makes me think of the scene in that movie, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, where they happen upon the ritual where they're about to kill the black man, Tommy.
Yeah. And
they're all in their robes, and the high priest has a different colored robe, and there's a color guard, and they have the big burning cross, and they're all singing and chanting, and that's what it.
Yes.
And that's what the video kind of reminded me of.
Yeah, it's definitely like that, and you have that same feeling of being like, oh,
it's creepy
as hell. Yeah,
heckin' creepy.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to be there. Well, unless you're one of these dudes.
I guess, yeah.
Every year. That's the other thing. It's like, is it the same? It's the same every single year, so you just keep doing the same thing every single year.
Boring.
Yeah, big time. Let's get a little more creative, guys. Good luck with that, though. The high priest wears a mic so that everything he says can be heard by all the audience members. He starts with, "The owl is in his leafy temple. Let all within the grove be reverent before him. Lift up your heads, O ye trees, and be ye lifted up. Ye ever-living spires, for behold, here is Bohemia's shrine, and holy are the pillars of this house. Weaving spiders, come not here." Elaborate and dramatic LARPing ensues. I'm kidding, but sort of not. I mean, it essentially is LARPing. So it's just I already said this, we recorded, as everyone may know, we had technical issues and we recorded this episode already, but we're recording it again. And I mentioned this movie in the last episode and I still don't remember the name of it. It's not I Love You Man. It's the other one that's like I Love You Man, where Sean William Scott, Paul Rudd, what in the heck? And there's all that LARPing. It's so much LARPing.
McLovin.
And I was like, man, that's just, McLovin.
Yeah,
that poor guy that's always going to be known as McLovin in most everyone's mind. But yeah, okay, so it's so dramatic. You know, the high priest closes with, "So shall we burn thee once again this night, and in the flames that eat thine effigy will read the sign, Midsummer, set us free." And he may be more dramatic than me when he reads it. Maybe just a tinge more. But a live symphony orchestra plays music at certain points for dramatic effect, and as the ritual reaches its climax, the effigy is set on fire, and I kid you not, they play screaming through the speakers that play out for all these people.
What's even worse is if you watch the documentary that Alex Jones had put together, and a lot of people have their opinions on Alex Jones.
Yeah, he's a nut.
But he was able to film this cremation of care.
Yeah.
Secretly, he was able to infiltrate. But he said when the screams start playing and the effigies lit on fire, that the crowd became they began like licking their lips and becoming very excitable and like werewolves to a full moon almost. You know what I mean? Just
what the heck?
Yeah, they were like way into it. I don't know, because they're weird.
That in itself is so, just playing screams. Y'all are freaking creeps. And now you're telling me that they're over there like,
yeah. Yeah, no.
Oh, a bunch of weirdos. Okay. And then fireworks are set off. Okay. So they gotta.
Okay.
So this whole thing is basically a super dramatic ceremony to torch their care and worries and allow them to whip out their wieners and frolic around without any worries for 2 weeks, basically. So it's like they did not get the opportunity to do what they wanted to do in high school, which was be in drama club. They were instead, part of the Young Republicans Club.
This is it's a very expensive, elaborate way to say YOLO.
Yeah. to say, it's like a stage mom living through her child, but they're just living through this weird 2-week period because they were probably stuffy as heck whenever they were young and they couldn't do any of this stuff.
Yeah.
So they now are trying to do it. And they're weird.
Exactly. So weird.
Yeah. In ancient Middle East, Canaanites and Phoenicians would regularly sacrifice their children to the horned god Moloch, who many believe is the inspiration behind the cremation of care ritual. And like Shai was talking about earlier, some say that the effigy is actually a child-sized, not an adult-sized effigy. So that could possibly have some, they could be thrown back to that.
The only reason why I say that is because normally when a human sacrifice is done, they want it to be something pure and virtuous, like a virgin child.
Yeah.
But either way, not okay, guys. Not okay.
Either way, a little bizarre. And the screaming part makes me think that you're a little more messed up in the head than you want to admit. That's some weird serial killer kind of behavior. Like, I want to hear the screaming of this thing I'm burning alive. Weirdos. The Isle of the Dead is a symphonic poem by Russian composer Sergei Rachmaninoff, and it tells a story of a ghostly ferryman who transports the death with a rowboat. The symphony is played by the orchestra during the cremation of care ritual as a hooded boatman dressed as death paddles across the pond, and it's a pond, by the way, not some lake, it's a little man-made pond, across the pond in front of the stage, just because it makes it sound even more pathetic. It's just like, okay. Which, I'm not going to hate on anybody for trying to have their own little drama club. That's fine. It's just, they take it a bit far. And it's a little creepy and sadistic, in my opinion, to burn something and play screaming.
So this whole Isle of the Dead thing was dumb, unnecessary thing they do with their little rowboat.
Yeah.
It is based off of this painting in the symphony, which is actually, if you look at the painting, it's really cool. It's creepy vibes. But really, it's just kind of a ripoff of the River Styx and the boatman Charon, who, takes the dead souls across the River Styx into the afterlife or whatever. So, but still, it's just their way of, getting to play.
Dress up.
Ghost Man or whatever. Yeah.
Whatever I don't know. I'm not sure. I find the screaming part, I'm like, that is just... There's like something disturbing to me about the fact that they play screaming. I don't know if I'm making too big of a deal of it or not, but it just seems very disturbing.
Yeah.
So, moving on, David Gergen, who is a name that I recognize, but I didn't really remember who he was. He was a top advisor for Presidents Ford, Nixon, Reagan, and Clinton, along with being a CNN contributor, was asked at the 2004 Republican National Convention if he had ever seen the cremation of care ritual. He was visibly uncomfortable and responded, "Frankly, I don't think that's something I need to talk to you about." When asked again, he responded, "That's none of your damn business." So... why was he so defensive if it's all just such an innocent play and, they're just hanging out, kicking back? Why can he not answer simple questions about it without being super defensive? That seems a little weird, just suspicious. And in 1993, the Washington Times reported that Gergen had removed himself from the Bohemian Club and 17 other interest groups. So maybe he wanted to leave the past in the past and they were gonna, do something to him if he talked about it too much. Who knows?
I want to know what hoops you have to jump through to get out of this club. It's like, it kind of seems like once you're in as a lifetime member, and
yeah.
I want to know what it takes to get out of it.
He's one of the only people I saw that has, so
Yeah.
it's definitely weird. Walter Cronkite, the anchor of well, I guess he is kind of an anchor. The anchor of CBS Evening News from 1962 to 1981 was widely believed to have recorded the voice for the Alf Shrine that is played over the loudspeaker during the ceremony. While accepting the Norman Cousins Global Governance Award in 1999, Cronkite made a joke about Satan running the NWO, the New World Order, and seriously suggested that countries give up their sovereignty and yield authority to a global government.
What the heck, Walter?
Yeah. So that's interesting. Kind of weird. Oh, and obviously he is a member of the Bohemian Grove, so. And he's joking-ish, apparently, but not really joking about global government.
It's like when you're like, haha, JK, but like, let me nudge you, like,
yeah.
But really, though. But really, though.
So that's just, there's just some suspicious stuff being said by people or whatever.
Well, during the research, he was supposed quoted as saying, yeah, I'll sit at the right hand of Satan, like, come join me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, somebody has got...
Sure.
I mean, I don't know what he's even getting at.
Who knows?
He's weird. They're all weird. Every day during the 2-week encampment at Bohemian Grove, after lunch at 12:30, a political insider or industry leader gives a 30-minute speech in their area of expertise, which these creeps call Lakeside Talks. These primarily revolve around political, economic, and business trends, and often include information that's not revealed to the public. In 1989, a reporter for Spy magazine, Philip Weiss, snuck inside the Grove for a chat given by General John Chain, the commander of Strategic Air Command at the time. In his talk, he lobbied the audience to help get him funding for the stealth B-2 bomber program, which was seemingly successful, as he eventually did get that funding, and it cost $45 billion. So that sounds like a pretty significant event that was discussed and proposed, I would say, at Bohemian Grove.
Yeah, hello. For a place that doesn't conduct business.
Right. I think we can both side-eye that BS claim, because that's definitely not... This is already the fourth thing that we've heard in just a few minutes of what they've done. Every 10 years, give or take, a limited number of yearbooks are produced for the Grove members called Annals of the Bohemian Grove. They contain dozens of photos from inside, including attendees in drag, the cremation of care ritual, and Lakeside Talk speakers. In Volume 7, that was from 1987 to 1996, Bush Jr. and Sr. are at the podium giving a Lakeside Talk where Sr. told the audience that his son would make a great president someday. And we all know that happened. And how it went. Nixon publicly praised the Bohemian Grove in his Lakeside Talk as paving the path for his presidency, but was privately recorded in the Oval Office denouncing the widespread homosexuality that took place there. If members' time at Bohemian Grove is just a vacation, why are there speeches by people like the director of the CIA, U.S. Army generals, mainstream media execs, political analysts, talk show hosts, and leading bigwig businessmen? Doesn't make a lot of sense, and it really kind of flies in the face of their claim that they're just there to have fun.
Right.
Yeah. Some of the Lakeside Talk speakers over the past 30 years have included the Secretary of Defense in 1981, Caspar Weinberger, who gave us Lakeside Talk rearming. Are you laughing at Weinberger? Or am I saying?
No, the entire name is silly.
Caspar Weinberger. His speech was entitled Rearming America, where he urged attendees to help increase, what do you guess, military spending. In 1991, Dick Cheney, who was the Secretary of Defense under Bush Sr. at that time, he was not yet the vice president, he gave a speech titled Defense Problems of the 21st Century, where he tried to get everyone to increase military spending. In 2011, Rupert Murdoch, founder of Fox News, gave a talk, The Future of News, along with Jeffrey Toobin, whose talk was entitled Supreme Court in the Age of Obama.
Just real quick, I wanted to bring up to Ashley we've discussed like how Fox News has a reputation of being factually inaccurate, correct, and just kind of like trying to influence its watchers, sway them in a certain way of thinking, which is no surprise.
Right. Here's Rupert Murdoch, Bohemian Grove in it. I mean, you have a bunch of friends.
Think about it.
Right.
Yep.
All your BFFs are talking to you about increasing military spending or, whatever you want to think about politically, and tell you what to put out to influence the way people think so that you can do everything you want to do. So that's not the most comforting thing in the world to think about.
No.
In 2013, the Press Democrat newspaper reported that Stanley McChrystal, who was a former U.S. Army general, Conan O'Brien, which is like kind of an oddball addition, Bill O'Reilly, and Glenn Beck were all scheduled to give Lakeside talks. So since 2013, there hasn't really been a lot of anything that has come out about who has given talks since that point.
Yeah.
So that's the gist of those Lakeside talks. As we all, I think, can deduce, there's some pretty serious, I would say, political, financial, influential heavy hitters making decisions. Like, how in the heck is that not business being conducted at the Grove?
They definitely have an agenda behind these talks, and
yeah,
it's not, I mean, depending on what you believe and how you look at it, I don't necessarily think it's very good, but...
Right. Doesn't seem like the military-industrial complex has gotten the whole world very far.
Yeah.
So we're going to, move off from the talks and start talking about some people who are trying to get more information about the Grove over the years. And really the only way they could do it was to try to infiltrate the place. You have to be kind of sketchy in order to get in there without, being a member. Or being a member, you have to be even more sketchy. But, to get information to release to the public, you have to do some sketchy dealings. And people then are going to say your information's illegitimate. So that's why this is a huge conspiracy theory, even though there's a lot of information that is pretty cut and dry, about this place.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, if you want to just take everything at face value, that's fine. But that's not the way we roll here at Creep It Real.
Yeah, weirdo.
Yeah, you weirdos. In 1980, there was a lady, Mary Moore, who founded the Bohemian Grove Action Network as an attempt to infiltrate and steal info to expose Bohemian Grove. She said that the Grove membership is wealthy and becoming more so, while the middle class is steadily becoming poorer. This close-knit group determines whether prices rise or fall by control of the banking system, money supply, and markets, and they make money whichever way the markets fluctuate.
Tell me something new.
Right, exactly. It's just like the pharmaceutical company that makes opioids and then makes the drug to help you get off of opioids. Yep. Either way the wind blows, they're getting something out of it. So in 1982, a reporter for Time magazine snuck into the Grove, but his story was censored and never published.
Aww.
Shockingly. In 1991, Dick Matheson, a reporter for People magazine, was able to sneak in and wander around for some time. He was eventually spotted and removed and wrote a story about his experience that was supposed to be published in the August 5th, 1991 issue of People magazine, but it never was. The managing editor, Landon Jones, claimed that killing the story had nothing to do with the fact that the execs for Time Warner, who was People magazine's parent company, being members of Bohemian Grove, which I have to say...
Oh, come on.
Yeah, right, dude. Oh, gosh. So, in 2000, Alex Jones snuck into the camp and, with this BBC documentary group, hiding a video camera in he had a shoulder bag and was able to hide a camera in it and actually film the entire cremation of care ritual. And as wackadoo as Jones typically is, he is the only person to have ever been able to get in here and actually secretly film the cremation of care ritual and show what actually goes on. So, he might be a crazy conspiracy theorist in general, but you can't discount that video because he's a weirdo. But the ceremony, as we have already discussed, is bizarre.
You can actually find this on YouTube and watch it too as well.
You can look up cremation of care ritual, you can look up Bohemian Grove, and generally find it quite easily as one of the first. It's in 2000 and it was a secretly filmed thing, so it's not like it's like this beautiful quality video.
HD.
But it's it is there. You can see it.
Yeah.
And it's quite interesting. The British journalist John Ronson, he documented Alex Jones' infiltration of the Bohemian Grove for his TV series that was called The Secret Rulers of the World, in which he investigates the claims of what he calls conspiracy theorists surrounding the New World Order. Ronson is a self-proclaimed skeptic and typically appears to make fun of his subjects trying to debunk their claims. Even he was surprised by the footage that Alex Jones captured of the cremation of care ritual and how bizarre it actually is.
Yeah, so, I mean, like as Ashley had mentioned before, he's definitely out there himself, and he's kind of a hard pill to swallow, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And then for him to be like this is weird. And then for the British journalist, who is someone that's, y'all are a bunch of just conspiracy weirdos, for him to be like almost speechless watching his reactions when he watches like the footage and hears Alex Jones talk about it, it's like he's blown away and he's like, what the heck? And this is not okay and this is not right. And then you further get to watch Alex kind of go into the town and talk to the locals too. And when he asked the initial question, what, you've been to Bohemian Grove, even some of the locals are like, yeah, I used to work there. And then he says, did you ever see the cremation of care ritual? And that's when like their whole demeanor and mood changes and they're like, what? No, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't think that's real.
Yeah, I've never heard of that before.
Yeah, and they kind of just want to get away from him. So
it's weird.
Yeah.
It makes me wonder, if you work there, you probably also have to sign a non-disclosure agreement where you're not allowed to talk about certain things, I'm sure.
And that would probably be the biggest one, is their cremation and care ritual, because it's so... Honestly, it's unacceptable. It really is.
It kind of flies in the face of the beliefs of most of these people.
Yeah.
It's very strange. This is like a kind of based in the occult and satanic ritual, this ceremony.
You listen to George Bush Jr. when he talks, everything is God this and God that and, prayers and stuff. But this is like completely opposite. Clearly has satanic undertones, if not blaring, blasting.
Yeah. Whatever your beliefs may be, you can at least acknowledge that these people preach one thing and then
do another.
Yeah, they're doing something completely different. So it's just very, very interesting and creepy. Okay, so in 2013, Colin Powell's email was hacked and photos of himself and friends at Bohemian Grove were uncovered, which is interesting. One email from News Corp executive Andrew Knight was discovered, where Knight was asking Powell to firmly point out to British Prime Minister at the time, Tony Blair, that he should attend the Grove summer encampment that year. Knight stated, Tony has not yet got his priorities straight, which what?
What do you mean? Like he's not sinister enough to be part of your cool kids club?
Really? What in the heck does that even mean? He hasn't got his priorities straight? You gotta get him to go to the Grove. We need to influence him to get his priorities straight. If that's not business, then what is, dudes? You're really absolutely conducting business there.
And going back to the email thing, it's very strange that this is such a secretive group and stuff. Why are they passing around personal pictures in emails which were easily hacked? And
I really don't know. The Pulitzer Prize winning columnist for the San Francisco Chronicle, Herb Caen, wrote about homosexual activities that took place in the Grove for years in his gossip column in the 80s. There have been long-standing claims of homosexual behavior at Bohemian Grove, which would be fine and dandy if these men weren't the same ones that were creating legislation prohibiting rights of homosexuals and railing against this very thing. Again, it's just another example of how they are going about their daily lives, doing their jobs one way, and then they're coming here and perhaps even taking part in this very same thing that they rail against on a near daily basis. What the heck is going on here? So Philip Weiss of Spy Magazine, who I talked about a minute ago, he snuck inside the Grove in 1989, and while he was there, he said several men tried to pick him up. In 2004, the New York Post reported that gay porn star Chad Savage was discovered to be working at Bohemian Grove, supposedly as a valet, but many believe this is just a cover for his real job of entertaining members. The Grove yearbooks have many photos of members in drag to entertain each other. It's just, and really the only reason I mention this is because, like I said, it is a stark contrast to what these dudes are saying, how they feel, what they're preaching about, what they, all the time in their political and whatnot careers. And then they're coming here and they've got gay porn stars servicing them. That doesn't align with their beliefs.
Right. These men, I'm sure some of them had part in passing bills to where they didn't want the gay community to have the same marital rights as straight people.
Right.
I highly doubt they attend drag shows and support that community on their free time and own time.
Yeah.
So for them to go do this, it's just who are you people?
Yeah. Yeah, you're just a hypocritical old
creep.
Richard Nixon, as we previously discussed, publicly praised the Grove as the starting point for his presidency, but conversely was recorded privately in the Oval Office with two other men, discussing how they felt that the media was glorifying homosexuality, especially in San Francisco. He is recorded as saying, "The Bohemian Grove, which I attend from time to time, is the most faggy goddamn thing you could ever imagine with that San Francisco crowd. I can't shake hands with anyone from San Francisco." Now, we all know Nixon was a huge asshole who had been recorded being racist and homophobic and all sorts of things and, designing laws to prohibit rights from people without actually coming out and saying that was what he was doing. But clearly, it looks to me like he didn't really want to be a part of the Grove. He just knew that, politically speaking, it behooved him to do so. So, yet again, another example of how it absolutely is a place where business is conducted and, it's like you have to do it in order to get what you need out of whatever advance in your career that you need. Even if it's not political, it would be political regardless if you're like a military dude or whatever. It's just clear, even everybody who's a member doesn't want to necessarily be there, but they need it because there's power behind this club.
Right. And it's just the secrecy that it's shrouded in, and it really just goes back to like with money, really anything's possible.
Right.
And your butt is covered and protected and it doesn't matter.
Money and power are going to allow you to do anything you want, even if you've made laws that say that other people can't do that. So cool. That makes me feel great.
Right, because then, you get busted for jaywalking, and just because you're a Sally Nobody, they're probably going to make you pay a huge fine.
Right.
Just because.
Or, all the countless people in prison because they're poor, essentially.
Yeah.
Thanks to Nixon, in part, it's just ridiculous. So, boo to this. So, there's also been a lot of rumors of prostitution that goes on at Bohemian Grove. And as we all know, sex scandals and powerful, wealthy men and politicians go hand in hand. It's not any surprise.
Right.
There's a place called the Northwood Lodge and Resort that's a few minutes away from Bohemian Grove and is supposedly where the men go to hook up with prostitutes while they're there, but I can't imagine that they really feel the need to go too far to even really go off of the campgrounds to do this, but maybe they do. Maybe they need to just, escape for a day.
Possibly that's where they keep the women.
Okay.
Because, you know what I mean? Like, it just kind of sounds like...
Yeah.
They don't want women roaming around on their free time here.
Right, okay, that makes sense. Good idea. Yeah, you're probably right about that. In 2001, Counterpunch, it's an indie investigative news site, published a story quoting that a few years ago, KGO Radio out of San Francisco had an interesting talk show where callers with firsthand experience at the Grove told their tales. A man from Monterrey said he was one of only several townspeople who rented cabins every year to prostitutes traveling from as far as Las Vegas to renew the boho's spiritual fibers. So... there are, I guess, a decent handful of these townspeople that rented cabins to prostitutes that were coming in town, kind of like if there was the Super Bowl or the Olympics.
Yeah.
It's like Bohemian Grove is coming. The old men need their prostitutes. They also spoke to a few strippers who were hired to perform for 3 nights at the Grove, who said that in addition to stripping, they were expected to perform sexually as well.
So they were just looked at as prostitutes, regardless.
Exactly. They were treated like pieces of meat, essentially. These women signed non-disclosure agreements so they could not speak publicly about their experience and only did so if their names would not be published, but I'm gonna take them for their word. The women said that they were scheduled to perform for 3 nights. The first night, 40 men attended their show and a few paid for their company for the night afterward. The second night, they said about 100 men attended, but some of the men started to get extremely degrading, and the women got so creeped out by them that they decided to leave the campground altogether. I'm not shocked by this behavior. I'm pretty sure most of us aren't, especially when we get a little further into this. I can only imagine.
Because, I can't imagine their pay, you know what I mean?
Yeah, they probably paid a decent amount.
Yeah. So to say no way, man, never mind.
Yeah. Well, and these are the same guys that burn an effigy and play dying screams.
True.
So
yeah. Yes.
Who the heck knows what they were trying to do and who also did not want women around and obviously don't really respect them in any way. So yeah. I can't imagine. So they said that the Grove refused to pay them for the 2 nights that they worked because they signed a contract for 3 days and were breaking the contract. So
what a jerk move.
Right. Well, are we shocked? So basically they're like, you better let us degrade the crap out of you for nights on end or you don't get paid. That's a cool deal. So this one woman, she claimed that she stole a laptop that had been sitting out as a form of payment whenever she left. And when she got home and opened the laptop, she found incredibly disturbing photos of what appeared to be women and children being violently raped.
I want to know, like, but why was that laptop so carelessly left out? And what was it doing in, like, the supposed quarter where, like, they kept their weapon or whatever? I don't know.
Well, I don't know. Maybe they have designated sex area and they...
I guess all these dudes are partying so much. I mean, maybe she just fell under the radar.
Yeah, well, this may not be true. Okay.
Yeah.
It's possible. It's not true. But let's go a little further into this. Okay. It's understandable that with rumors of the cremation of care ritual and human sacrifice, it could appear that these old dudes are murdering someone every year, but the photos taken by the former employee did prove at least that effigy was just an effigy and not an actual person. Yes. That said, rumors of murder at Bohemian Grove still persist. There are allegations of horrific, sadistic acts that are said to involve the sexual abuse of children and the production of snuff films. Yeah. That's terrifying. The allegations come primarily from former U.S. Senator John DeCamp, who was a Nebraska state senator in the 90s and was also an attorney that represented several children who he claimed were sexually abused inside Bohemian Grove in the 80s at the hands of a pedophilia ring operating within one of the camps. In 1992, DeCamp published a book called The Franklin Cover-Up, where he claimed a boy, Paul Bonassi, was viciously sexually abused at the hands of a group of men inside Bohemian Grove. DeCamp alleged that Bonassi was forced to engage in necrophilia and claimed to have witnessed men rape and murder a young boy during the summer of '84 on or around July 26th. Okay, that part alone to me, I'm like, okay, that's a specific, such a specific time. He has the date. It was on or around July 26th, 1984. I mean,
it would just be like such an elaborate lie to make up something so horrific too as well.
It would. This was way before the internet was common, and there was very little information that had been published about Bohemian Grove in general. So it's not like Bonassi was you or I, you know, doing a Google search and coming up with a million different things about Bohemian Grove. Yeah. This was way before that. I mean, there was the internet, but it was not prevalent like it was today, and not for Bonassi.
And there probably wasn't Wikipedia pages on Bohemian Grove at this point,
No, there was nothing. There were very few random photos published in a National Geographic, and it was just a one tiny little photo of the cremation of care, and there was one other maybe like of a talk, one of the lakeside talks or something, but that was it. There was nothing beyond that, and it wasn't like there was the published address of Bohemian Grove. So Bonassi said that the abuse occurred in a luxurious Northern California campground in an area that had big trees where men wore black hooded robes, and there was a giant moss-covered owl statue. Those are pretty specific details. I mean, how would you know that unless you were there? I don't know. At that time especially. This was not published.
Well, how is such a young person getting this information anyway? Like, why would he know any of this in the first place? Just being a normal, everyday, non-special child.
Yeah, unless he had
firsthand.
That's it. DeCamp says that when he asked Bonassi to lead him to the location of his alleged abuse, he led him to the gates of Bohemian Grove. Straight to the gates, okay? Paul, how in the heck do you know that? You know, I just like that in itself also is another huge red flag that this is a legit story. Yeah. Now, we are going to cover Paul Bonassi. Why do I keep saying Bonassi? We're going to cover Paul Bonassi further in the next few weeks with another story that we're doing that ties into this whole thing. But, you know, there are a lot of varying opinions about his legitimacy and what he says, if there is any truth to it. But, I mean, at some point, are you going to believe just straight facts that this kid would not have at his disposal? He led this John DeCamp to the gates of Bohemian Grove, which, by the way, it's not like this giant gate that says
welcome Bohemian Grove.
No, it's like secretive. You have to drive a ways to get there in the first place. I mean, once you get past the gate, you have to go a ways. This kid is not, can we just take it for face value and be like, how does this kid know this? I don't know. Seems like he may have been there.
Well, he didn't get on Google Maps.
No, he didn't. And it wasn't listed.
GPS it.
Paul Bonassi wrote in his journal about the abuse right after it was said to have occurred. like I said, we'll discuss this further, but he said he and another boy named Nicholas were forced to rape another boy who was then shot and killed immediately after, all while being videotaped. His journal reads, "After that, the men grabbed Nicholas and dragged him off screaming. They put me up against a tree and put a gun to my head, but fired in the air. I heard another shot from somewhere and then saw the man who killed the boy drag him like a toy. Everything, including when the men put him in a trunk, was filmed. The men took me with them and we went up in a plane. I saw the bag the boy was in. We went over a very thick brush area with a clearing in it. Over the clearing, they dropped the boy. One said the men with the hoods would take care of the body for them." So, a little elaborate. Yeah, for the, like,
a little bit.
The mind of a boy. And he wrote that stuff at the time, because we will talk about this in the future, but I'm going to bring it up now, that they did forensic testing on his journals and they were accurate. The ink he used, it was from the time that he says this took place in 84 or around then.
Yeah.
So it was not like he went 10 years later and wrote these journals once he found out a little bit more about Bohemian Grove. Okay. So that in itself is disturbing as hell to me. So in the first print of DeCamp's book, he did not include Bonassi's description of the owl statue and the men in the hoods because he felt it was too far-fetched for people to believe, which I understand, but it was only years later that he learned of Bohemian Grove and became convinced that Bonassi was abused there. And I would tend to agree with him.
Yeah. Especially knowing what we know from different cases. Like,
yeah.
There's no way he wasn't there.
Right. When DeCamp first told William Colby of the CIA about his investigation, Colby reportedly told him to forget everything he knew and get as far away from this thing as you can. Forget you ever saw it or know it, heard it, or anything else. He said DeCamp was opening a can of worms containing forces too dark for him to handle, which...
Oh, well. For him to use that wording, like, there's something definitely, like, sinister behind the scenes. Not just not just a gang of dudes in their cool club leather jackets, like, we'll rough you up, man. But no.
Having their cigarettes rolled up in their sleeves and slicking their hair back for 2 weeks. Like, no. Even if it was just prostitute sex that was going on, I don't think that would be the kind of reaction you would get from someone in the CIA, you know?
Yeah.
It's a dramatic reaction. It was only after DeCamp said he couldn't walk away from his investigation that Colby told him to get his story out before someone murdered him to stop it. Again, what the heck, man? That sounds pretty dramatic if it's just a fun club.
Which makes me think, prior we had mentioned that someone had wanted to publish a story about it before, but it was never done. So was his life threatened? Like, to what extent will they go to not get a story published about them? I
mean, if you have all this power and money, like, what's stopping you from doing anything to not get your info out?
Nothing. Well, it's just strange now. Like, why now are they not so adamant about books being published and YouTube videos and podcasts?
Well, I guess it's kind of like he was saying is you got to get it out before they can make you just out to be just some little loon, But I mean, I have, until really getting into true crime, I never heard about this. I don't think I'd ever really heard about John DeCamp.
Heard of Van DeCamp.
Yeah. He didn't get too far with this whole thing, though. Colby himself later died in what was called a canoeing accident, though many suspect that it was murder due to the suspicious circumstances surrounding his death. Dang, dude, how many canoeing accidents result in death, I wonder, are there?
That must have been a wild canoe ride.
A wild canoe ride. At around the same time, the Washington Post ran a front page story, Homosexual Prostitution Inquiry Ensnares VIPs with Reagan Bush, and detailed a shocking story of a gay prostitution ring in Washington, D.C. that provided teen call boys to some very powerful and well-connected men. Which, I'm sorry, but if they're underage teenagers, is it really a gay prostitution ring, or is it
It's a
child sex ring?
It's a child sex ring, man. There's no question about it.
They don't have any choice.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, so regardless of how they worded it, which, we're going to say it's a dang child sex ring. It's not a willing prostitute. Mm-hmm. These are boys that have been taken and forced into this stuff. The man running the ring was a lobbyist, Craig Spence, who through connections was able to bring several teen boys who worked for him as prostitutes on a midnight tour of the White House. So the article began, a homosexual prostitution ring is under investigation by federal and district authorities and includes among its clients key officials in both Reagan and Bush administrations, military officers, congressional aides, and U.S. and foreign businessmen with ties to Washington's political elite. Documents obtained by the Washington Times reveal. The story quietly went away and has long been forgotten by most of the public.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, wait, why have I never heard this? My husband is 6 years older than me. He had never even heard of this before. What am I talking about?
I've seen countless message boards and things where people are debating whether child prostitution rings exist current day. When we already know how bad the human sex trafficking problem is. Are we really not in 2018 aware that there are children being forced into enslavement, essentially? I mean, come on. It happened. And then in 1990, it's talked about on the Washington Post, and yet somehow that story gets brushed under the rug and nobody freaking hears about it ever again.
Well, and you gotta think too, like, people probably don't believe it happens because it's probably a lot, I don't want to say it's easier, but it's probably a lot easier to conduct your business now that we have the internet and we have Backpage and we have the dark web and whatnot. So absolutely they exist, and it happens right under our noses. It happens right here in America, in our hometowns, and it's like the sickest, saddest thing.
It is a tragedy. Several teen boys who worked for him as prostitutes. No, they don't work for him,
Well, and because there are, teen prostitutes, sex workers, and that's just kind of the route they took. But it's purely out of, like, survival. Maybe they're runaways, maybe they are abandoned children. But then again, still, it's, like, completely inexcusable. They are still just children. They're not consenting adults. They have no idea what. It's complete mental abuse and physical as well.
The story went away, has long been forgotten, and funnily enough, a similar elite pedophile ring was going on in London at the same time. The Guardian recently reported 2 news executives have told The Observer that they were issued D notices, which is a warning not to publish intelligence that might damage national security, when they sought to report on allegations of a powerful group of men engaging in child sex abuse and possible murder in the 80s at the same dang time. One said he was accosted in his office by 15 uniformed and 2 non-uniformed police. Now, this is the London Guardian, not the National Enquirer, and it sounds strikingly similar to the accusations that were made by DeCamp at the same time. 2 retired Scotland Yard detectives also recently came forward and said that powerful and well-known politicians in the UK sexually abused and murdered young boys at parties, and they were prevented from arresting these men because they were part of what are called the Untouchables, which sounds way too similar to the dang Bohemian Grove creeps.
And if you think that there's not these types of things like all over the world, you're kidding yourself.
Right.
Wherever there's money and power, there's weird stuff going on.
You got men who are running amok. These retired detectives, these Scotland Yard detectives, actually named names, including a man, Cyril Smith, who was a prominent member of British Parliament who died in 2010. I have to say, if that's going on over there, you can't tell me that you think that it's just secluded to London.
The difference is the men in London sound like chimney sweeps, and they'll sweep the chimney for a dollar.
Hello. Okay, guys, because we have...
Hello, my lady.
Oh, we have a decent number of UK listeners, so hey, guys. Shout out to you.
No offense.
No offense. Not at all. None intended.
Inside joke.
We just like to do the accent, and poorly. We went way off.
Back on track.
Okay, so now we're going to break some hearts of some Hunter S. Thompson fans. Maybe, if you care. And if it may not be true, but let's just listen to the facts here. Or listen to the allegations, rather. So a man that is closely connected with the Franklin cover-up, which we spoke about earlier, the credit union, which we'll talk about some other time, he made startling allegations about Hunter S. Thompson and Bohemian Grove. His name was Rusty Nelson. He was the personal photographer for Lawrence King, who was the central figure of the Franklin credit union sex scandal. And he alleged that the famous journalist, Hunter S. Thompson, offered him $100,000 in 1988 to produce a snuff film film involving the murder of a child. Rusty declined the offer. And coincidentally, Paul Benassi also claimed and wrote in his journal that a man named Hunter S. Thompson was in Bohemian Grove at the time of his abuse, and that Thompson was the man that videotaped the abuse. And in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, Thompson wrote about receiving adrenochrome from a Satanist, which is supposedly a powerful hallucinogen that is believed to come from the pineal gland immediately after a person is killed.
Which is just like...
Interesting.
Yeah, I think that's pretty wild.
I wonder if that's a legit hallucinogen.
I don't know, because how often are they harvesting this thing? Are they just using human bodies as like a crop?
A way to get a very rare high? Probably. I mean, who knows? It's possible.
I just looked it up, and apparently there are adrenochrome farms, and it says here that it's a secret immortality serum all the Illuminati use.
Oh, hell. Well.
But I'm thinking, hey, is this how Jared Leto stays so young?
Is he constantly on
this
hallucinogen?
Is secret? Is he taking adrenochrome?
He's
He's into something because the man has aged in reverse.
Well, now that is true. It is quite amazing. Though, he is one of the most insufferable human beings that has ever lived. So I think perhaps his personality has been sucked away in order for him to look so beautifully young for the rest of his life.
Okay.
Now, I grew up watching My So-Called Life. It was only 6 episodes, or whatever. It was very short. But, Jared Leto was such a dreamboat. Oh my gosh. I remember thinking he was the most beautiful boy in the world. And now...
This is how I felt watching Even Stevens, watching Shia LaBeouf.
Okay. Are you trying to point out that I'm 4 years older than you? Or is it 3?
I'm 30.
Am I 34 or 33? I don't remember. Either way, you are trying to point out a little bit.
No, I'm not.
Yes, you are.
I just never watched that show.
Right, because I was in 6th grade and you were in 3rd grade or whatever at the time. So,
just a baby.
A little tiny baby. As much as people today may not like Shia LaBeouf. LaBeouf?
LaBeouf. It means the beef.
LaBeouf?
Yeah.
Okay, so I personally would rather spend an eternity with him versus Jared Leto at this point in my life.
You probably are going to have women come fight you for saying such things.
Wait, because they love Jared Leto or because they love Shia LaBeouf? Oh, well, take him, man. Like, take him all you want. You would be around him for like 15 minutes and you'd be ready to call yourself an Uber and get the hell away from him because he'd be like, so I really believe my stars have aligned and it's like, I don't need to hear it, dude. I want to just eat some food, have some sex. That's all I wanted out of you.
It would have to be vegan food.
Oh, is he vegan?
Yeah.
Well, maybe that's why he looks so young. Who knows? Okay.
I'm telling you, he's on this adrenochrome.
Yeah, he must be doing something. Okay, back to the story. Okay, so we're talking about Hunter S. Thompson still. Right. So in 2004, Hunter S. Thompson's in his book, Hey Rube, he also wrote about how organized pedophilia rings keep children as sex slaves.
Duh.
Here's what he wrote.
That's kind of the whole premises.
Well, we know this, but there are a vast majority of people that are in denial, apparently. So he says, the autumn months are never a calm time in America. There is always a rash of kidnappings and abductions of school children in the football months. Preteens of both sexes are traditionally seized and grabbed off the streets by gangs of organized perverts who traditionally give them as Christmas gifts to each other to be personal sex slaves and playthings. Oh my gosh.
Disgusting.
Yes.
Disgusting.
Thompson was known to get personally involved in the stories he was investigating, like when he lived with the Hells Angels for 2 years in the 80s while doing a story on them. After his suicide in 2005, his former editorial assistant wrote an editorial online recounting some of his bizarre behavior, like playing a recording of a rabbit caught in a trap for weeks, and said he once threw her out for not wanting to watch a snuff film, calling her a coward. Okay,
if you've ever heard a dying rabbit call, it is the worst noise ever, and you immediately want it to be over and done with, and why would you ever want to willingly listen to that?
That seems very strange. Obviously, he's trying to elicit something in himself, and so it kind of reminds me of the screaming that they put on for the cremation of Carol.
Well, that, and it also reminds me of when we talked about, the way certain sounds affect your mood. and line of thinking. Maybe he was trying to drive himself mad. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
the guy seems weird.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely.
I don't know much about him.
Definitely, I do think that probably was some sort of weird way to like get him inspired in some way. So anyway, his editorial assistant, even though she wrote that, she thinks that he was possibly investigating the claims at the Bohemian Grove of snuff films and murder and sexual abuse of children, and may have pretended to be interested as part of the investigation, but stated that she firmly believed he was not really part of this as a participant, which that's up for everyone's interpretation.
Yeah.
Who knows? He could be I mean, that's a pretty serious extent to go to just be trying to investigate, which I get you would have to immerse yourself in it, but at the same time, to the point where you are filming someone rape a kid and murder him, I don't know. You know?
I don't know, it's very strange, because, like, if it's true, who knows how much of it had to do with his suicide, because how can you live with yourself knowing that you helped participate in these things?
I'm kind of curious about his suicide and what it entailed. Because then I'm also thinking, okay, say he was investigating the Bohemian Grove and pretending to take part in all these weird things just to be a journalist, because I don't know about his suicide. Was he actually murdered and it made it look like a suicide because he may have been gonna break the story? I don't know. I'm just playing devil's advocate here.
Well, I get living with Hell's Angels for 2 years to get a story. I don't understand going as far as he supposedly did in Bohemian Grove.
Though, I mean, in order to be able to expose it, you'd have to be able to do it. You would. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to expose it. So, I don't know. And I will say that when we get into further topics that we're going to cover that are related to this, kind of all tied together, that a startling number of individuals who had information, top secret information that would expose certain people for doing terrible things, those people ended up either dying by suicide, dying mysteriously. Yeah, I mean, so who knows? It is staggering the amount of people who ended up dying under mysterious circumstances. I'm not trying to give Hunter S. Thompson an excuse here, but it's possible that I'm creating a whole other conspiracy, or I'm sure it's already been created. Anyway, okay. So now we're going to get on to a little bit more bizarro stuff. We're coming to a close, but here's where things get a little even more. I mean, no, I think the murder and rape of children is probably as bizarre as you can get, but we're going to talk about something called sex magic, because it may kind of explain why, if you're over there thinking, why would these, leaders of industry and presidents and be raping kids and, doing sadistic things to prostitutes? Well, maybe it's because of this whole sex magic thing that kind of ties into the whole occult rituals they've already been doing with this cremation of care, with their patron saints and their idols, and the symbolism of the whole grove and the club itself may in some way be explained by this belief in sex magic with a K. Sex magic is the belief and practice that through various sex acts, people can supposedly generate sexual energy and direct it to metaphysically shape the very fabric of our reality, which is a little bit, okay, man. On one hand, you would say, okay, first of all, you said last time we recorded this, that reminded you of...
So it reminds me of when we were talking about in Montauk, how they said that they would put, what's his face?
Duncan,
into like this orgasmic state of this pure sexual bliss, and he would be able to like manipulate time and space during this time, and it's just like, why though?
Yeah, I know, but like completely forgot about that. And when you said that, I was like, oh my gosh, you're right. I didn't even know it at the time, but here they were performing sex magic with a K.
Yeah.
Yeah, so at the outset, this seems innocent, like, hey, just some consensual sex among adults. It's really not innocent, is often incredibly violent. Some examples of sex magic include supposed rituals in Japan where a man participates in skull f***ing, then copulating with a woman, and using the mixed fluids to perform a ritual. I think we've all heard that phrase before, and I never really thought about it. Never really thought about it. But it's interesting because a lot of all of this sex magic, really, it's all about using the mixed fluids of these like different things they do and performing a ritual with them. So
have at it.
Yeah, have at it. So another ritual involves anal sex, wherein the semen is mixed with the blood from good gosh, everyone, brace yourselves here. From violent anal tearing. And again, they mix that blood and the semen together to perform a ritual. Yet another ritual takes a woman's menstrual blood and a man's semen, mixing them together, and then baking like cookies or something with them, and then they're to be ingested, which is supposed to be giving the person who eats them special powers. I'd say it probably just gives you a bad taste in your mouth.
Maybe a gut ache.
Ugh, like what the hell? Okay, so the last one that we'll mention involves placing, quote unquote, placing semen in the womb of a horse, which I think we can all agree is probably just code for bestiality. They're having sex with a horse. So we mention this not for shock value, but because perhaps the men who allegedly abused Paul Benassi at Bohemian Grove believed that they were performing this magic. And with such bizarre and disturbing beliefs in sex magic, is it really that hard to believe that an inner circle of a secret society of power-hungry megalomaniacs would engage in rape, murder, and pedophilia in order to possibly gain some supernatural powers? Probably not. I mean, as we talked about, it's really, at some point, the money is never enough. The power is never enough.
Yeah, like Ashley mentioned, we're not doing this to like shock and awe and to gain followers, but these are the men that are put in charge of our country and that we're supposed to trust with our future, making these decisions regarding our society.
Right. That affect the entire world.
Yeah.
So, and you know, if you're, and while we don't really know if they're over there raping and, you know, doing all sorts of weird sex magic, which I think we can both say, you know, I'll speak for myself, but do what you want with your sex. But when it comes to like abusing unwilling participants and, you know, killing people, I think you've taken it a step way too far. So while these claims of this certain behavior like murder and child abuse and whatnot are not substantiated, there's plenty of supporting evidence to make us think twice about completely dismissing them. You know, so I'm not telling you to believe this happens 100%, but I am also here to say that you can't just completely dismiss them just because it sounds completely off the wall. You know, things happen that are disturbing in the world. And believe me, we don't know the half of it. So if we think that this may be happening because of some fairly decent evidence, then it may. But it's at least enough to make us question what is going on there. So regardless of the rape and the murder aspect of Bohemian Grove, what we do know for sure is that this group of ultra wealthy and powerful conservative men conduct business at the Grove, whether they deny it or not. And it's absolutely disturbing that decisions that affect our entire country and our entire world are made by a group of insiders whose sole purpose is to embolden, enrichen, and harness more power for themselves. They are only out to help one another. You know, they don't give two flips about you or I or anyone else that's not this powerful, wealthy group or people who can do something for them. What do we have to offer them? Nothing. So they don't, their decisions and the things that they're doing there, those decisions are only made in order to benefit them and those just like them. And that in itself is disturbing to me and should be disturbing to you as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, who really knows the extent to which their decisions have affected our lives? And I'm talking about every single one of us, whether you're in Australia listening right now, because I know you are, or the UK, or wherever you are. It's very, very possible that the decisions that these old men have been making have affected you in some way. And that in itself makes Bohemian Grove a sketchy, disturbing place. I think that's where we can kind of end our coverage on Bohemian Grove today.
Yeah.
As we have mentioned, we're going to carry over some of this stuff into a future episode.
Bohemian Grove is kind of like the segue into the next couple episodes we're going to be doing because they all tie together into like this giant web of just insane cover-ups, conspiracies, shady underhand things, and
for sure.
Yeah, they all tie in with each other. There's like connections everywhere.
Right. no matter, some of you may feel like this is boring or this is like, who cares? We sound crazy with whatever we've said or, what the allegations are. But there is something off about the fact that it's covered up so extensively, how it seems like nobody can talk about this that's actually out in like the public view and not just alternative individuals who have been discredited for one reason or another.
Yeah.
And it lends itself for you to think, well, maybe there's something a little more sinister that goes on here, or a little more than what they claim. And the same is going to go for the next few episodes that we're going to have, that Shai just said is all kind of like a tangled web of conspiracy, of cover up. And again, it's all, if you're that worried about covering it up or keeping it quiet and whatnot, what are you hiding? And I can't wait to break open even more of the sketchy stuff to you, because I really do think that you should be aware of these things.
Totally.
So anyway,
we hope you guys enjoyed the Bohemian Grove coverage. I know it's not everybody's cup of tea, but we do like our conspiracy theories, and this one we have been looking into for a while now, so.
Right. If there's a conspiracy theory out there that has people with testimonies and there are facts behind it, I'm going to talk about it, and I'm not going to completely discount it off the bat because it sounds crazy.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things that go on in the world that would sound totally crazy, but they happen. Take this information and form your own opinions, but come back next week and we'll give you even more. Okay, so thank you everybody for listening again this week. We really appreciate your patience in us getting this episode out to you. We are super excited. I say it every week, but we're super excited to hear from you and see the different places that we have listeners coming from. So if you guys could, please share.
Yeah. Share, subscribe, rate, leave comments on the Instagram about the episodes, just anything, really.
Yeah. Say hi. Tell us what you want to hear, any stories that you want to hear about, any like local stories that you may see in your area that you don't know if there's been a lot of coverage on. We always welcome ideas for future shows and talking to you guys about stuff that interest both of us.
Yeah.
So I did want to mention that as I mentioned on our Instagram and on our Facebook, we are transitioning to about every 9 days, give or take, episode release date. So instead of it being every Thursday, it's going to be about every 9 days. This is going to help us just ensure that we're getting enough time to dedicate to research and production so that it isn't just a total trash heap. And we want to bring you the best possible content that we can. And it's also going to give us an opportunity to bring some extra, like, special content to you in the future. Your support is very much appreciated. And if you want to email us with any questions or comments, it's creepitrealpod@gmail.com.
All right.
I think that's it.
All right, y'all. Have a great rest of your week.
Yep. Okay. Creep it real out there. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.